Tears are whispers of the soul, sacred droplets that cascade to soothe the fire within when grief touches our hearts. These quiet moments, they emerge as silent healers, weaving through the pain, offering solace to our wounded spirits. These gentle streams carry with them a grace that transcends our earthly experiences and tenderly ease our pain and coax our spirits towards peace. In the solitude of our tears, we find a connection, a universal language that binds our vulnerabilities to the heartstrings of others, drawing forth empathy and understanding from the depths of shared human experiences.
My sister had been fighting cancer, and the doctors say the time is coming very soon. On Christmas morning, she passed, and my mom said she just opened her eyes. She hadn't opened her eyes for at least a day and a half. She opened her eyes, looked at the foot of her bed, and smiled with her eyes sparkling at someone we couldn't see. And I could feel the energy in the room. It was an intensely sacred moment. So I went, you know what? I'm going to go into meditation and pull my sister back. I'm going to save my sister.
Our guest brings us into her world with deeply personal stories of losing loved ones and the spiritual insights that arose from these experiences. We explore how grief, while deeply painful, can be a catalyst for spiritual awakening and healing. Through her shamanic practices and near-death experience, we gain a new perspective on the sacred transition from life to death and the love that connects us all. Welcome to this episode. You're listening to the Urban Grief Shamans podcast, and I'm your host, John Moyer.
I went into meditation, and I saw her leaving in a flowing upward motion with a being of light. It could have been an angel that was feminine and holding her in a light embrace as they went up. And I reached up mentally and grabbed a hold of her ankles and to pull her back because I was going to save my sister. I wasn't going to let death take my sister. And she looked down at me with her eyes sparkling with love and said, "No, I want to go." And I went, what? My whole world was rocked.
That's our guest, Elisha Gabrielle. This beautiful soul shares her spiritual journey, which began during her teenage years. Inspired by the reading of the universal teachings of Edgar Cayce, she embraced yoga, practicing in her living room, and later became a teacher of Kundalini yoga. Her path led her to write her first book, White Buffalo and Rainbow Warrior, chronicling her shamanic initiation and encounters with spiritual teachers.
I was 19 years old. I was living on the land in Santa Fe with a group of other people. We were all living in tents in Santa Fe. My sister had been fighting cancer and going to doctor's appointments for 2 years. They were trying different things that didn't work. Occasionally, I would go home and be with my family for a while, and then I'd go back to Santa Fe again. And my mom called and said, the doctors say the time is coming very soon. She is asking for you if you could come home and be with her. So I flew home, and she was in our house, not the hospital. Her bedroom was upstairs next to mine, and she was now bedbound. We had talked a lot about death and spirituality. She was not a spiritual person, but because I'm who I am, that's where our conversations went over the years. And I would talk to her about spiritual life and death and what she might expect. And she was fine with that. On Christmas morning, she passed. My mom was sitting next to her. We knew that the end was coming very soon. We were downstairs having breakfast, and my mom came down and said she just passed. And my mom said she just opened her eyes. She hadn't opened her eyes for at least a day and a half. She opened her eyes, looked at the foot of her bed, and smiled with her eyes sparkling at someone we couldn't see. And I could feel the energy in the room. It was an intensely sacred moment. I could feel the angels around. It was a very sacred moment. I thought she's just passed. By the way, my parents had programmed me and the culture had programmed me my entire life that death was the worst thing that could happen to you. You might get injured, but at least you didn't die. At least you didn't leave your body and pass into spirit. And so I had that belief. So I went, you know what? I'm going to go into meditation and pull my sister back. I'm going to save my sister. I went down into my parents' bedroom and sat in easy pose, legs crossed. I went into meditation and I saw her leaving in a flowing upward motion with a being of light that seemed to be feminine. It could have been an angel. There were no wings, and many times angels don't show up with wings. But it was a being of light that was feminine and holding her in a light embrace as they went up the light. And I reached up mentally and grabbed a hold of her ankles and to pull her back because I was going to save my sister. I wasn't going to let death take my sister. And she looked down at me with her eyes sparkling with love and said, no, I want to go. And I went, what? My whole world was rocked. Here I am trying to save you and you want to go? And she said, yes, I want to go. So I said, okay, I accept that. I put my hands together at my heart. I'm going to likely tear up. But gosh darn it. I sang a song to her, and if I sing it, I'm going to break down crying, but I'll tell you the words, and you may have heard it. It was from the yoga organization that I was a part of, and it was, may the long time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on, guide your way on, guide your way on. And I let go of her because I knew that it was what her soul was calling her to. I knew her soul was calling her home. Mm-hmm. And I let go of her. I went back to Santa Fe. And there is when I broke down and cried in my bed and just cried literally on and off for hours because I knew it wasn't constructive to repress feelings. And so I just let it out and cried for hours. Actually even manifested a sickness. It was like having the flu where I just felt sick. And I know that was my spirit, the human part of me grieving. The higher part of me completely accepted that she had moved into higher realms of beauty that we can't even imagine, of love that is so palpable and is 24/7. I know they don't have hours there. But it is eternal. The love that you feel in those realms is intense and it is palpable. And I was happy that she was having that experience. But the human part of me still had to grieve. So I think I only cried that one time. And I probably cried for 2 or 3 hours straight. My mom believed she had gone somewhere filled with love. And she was done with her suffering. She was done with being in a bed, done with hospitals and doctors, and she was free. I don't know about my dad. He never talked about it. Shortly after that, my mom and dad parted ways. My dad moved to Mexico and lived the rest of his life there, had a very lovely passing into spirit. My mom passed when she was 85 or 86. I can't quite remember, but that was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I was happy for my mom that she could be with my sister if that's what she chose.
Mm-hmm. But there's still grieving when we lose our parents or we're close to, isn't there?
My father was a violent alcoholic. He was a very intense Scorpio. He'd go into rage with his anger, and he would beat us for things that he did. I had 2 sisters, and he would knock things over in the night when he drank. He would spill things on the carpets and then blame us because he didn't remember doing it. He truly did not remember doing it. And because we wouldn't admit to it, he would beat us. He would beat us. He would beat my sisters until they started crying. And that to him showed submission. So once they started crying, he would stop beating him. But being the rebel in the family, I tuned into that and I went, aha, he wants us to show submission. So I would never cry. I learned not to cry, to hold my tears in. And I kept that for the rest of my life. When my baby died, it took me like a year and a half to cry because I had trained myself to hold the tears back. It was a sign of submitting to someone that wanted to hurt.
Was it your first child?
No, she was my third. My first child was my son. Then I had my daughter. She died of crib death at 3.5 months. And I had my next 2 sons after that. When she passed, I was, what's the word? I had become so much of my higher self that I didn't cry when she passed. But I understood that her soul was immediately, she's left. I found her little clay body. We had gone downstairs to meditate and I had just nursed her and laid her down on the sheepskin in the bedroom and wrapped her with light blankets as we always did back then. I wrapped her and laid her down on the sheepskin and we went down for morning meditation and came back 2 hours later and I went to pick her up and I knew just from looking at her that she had passed. It was like looking at a doll laying there, a living baby. Her color was gone and she had gone quick because her color was gray. She literally was like a clay doll. And I knew she had passed and there was a little bit of liquid coming out of her mouth and stuck to the sheepskin, which I think was the milk that I had just nursed her. So we picked her up and went to the emergency room just in case. And they said, no, she is gone. They wanted to do an autopsy because I was not crying and hysterical. I'm a yogi. I can control my emotions most of the time. And I know when it's appropriate to let them out and not let them out. And I wasn't going to cry in the medical office. I would wait till I got home. And then I got home. And again, for me, death is such a beautiful passing into a sacred realm. And that feeling of the sacred was so intense around me. And I knew that her soul had chosen to go home and to only let me have her for 3.5 months. I was very angry at her soul that she did that. I felt like she tricked me. I had beautiful little baby clothes for a little baby girl. My breasts were full of milk. Felt mad at her soul that she had made that decision to go back into spirit at 3.5 months. I carried that anger for a very long time. I carried that anger for years because I didn't understand why she would do that. Finally, after about 4 or 5 years, I came to the conclusion, I don't know why she did that. I probably won't in this lifetime. But I'm not going to carry this anger because it just hurts me and it lowers my frequency. So I said to her in spirit, I don't know what your reasons for doing that were, but whatever they were, I knew they were good reasons. They were chosen through spirit, through higher consciousness. They were chosen for me to grow in my own way and to learn to accept that death is a natural part of life. And yet our culture views it as being the worst thing that could ever happen to you. And yet it's going to happen to every single one of us. So maybe we need to change our cultural expectations. And I see it happening already. That was years ago, 30 years ago, when there was that thing that death is the worst thing that could ever happen to you was very prevalent. gradually, as humanity has opened up and awakened, the culture has changed somewhat. It certainly isn't accepting it 100%. And there is still that old paradigm that we are moving away from and awakening to the deeper meanings of the things that happen in our lives. At that time, there was still the paradigm that death is the worst thing that could happen to you. I see society changing, and I see people having life celebrations instead of the word funeral. It's not even being used as much as it was. My husband died, and you're invited to the life celebration on August, and then they have moving pictures of him that they had stored, and it's a happier time while everybody is still hugging each other. Their tears of both joy and their tears of grieving at the same time. Life celebrations are becoming much more normal than they were when I lost my sister and when I lost my baby.
In Welder's book, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, he talks about everything that we love, we're going to lose. Whereas the general trend is that everything I love, I'm going to keep. And as you said, no, we're going to lose it. And the sooner that we realize that everything we love, the job, the car, the house, is all going to go, and then our dear loved ones, and eventually we'll be losing our own life here on this planet. The idea is that knowing you're going to lose something allows you to love it more deeply and have greater compassion and deeper capacity to love deeply. I had a near-death experience in 2018 that shaped your understanding of grief in this ritual journey that follows a profound loss. And you want to unpack that a little bit for us?
I was having so much pain in my pelvic area. I found out that I had a prolapsed uterus, and the pain got worse and it got worse. And people were commenting on it. You don't look too good at work. I went, okay, I have to schedule surgery. I was hoping I could heal it naturally, but that's not happening. So I have to schedule surgery. They put it off and put it off and put it off for so long. I was just absolutely miserable in physical pain. Finally, the day came when I could have the surgery. And I was so happy that I was finally going to be out of pain. And everybody in the hospital was really nice. And so I was in recovery, hooked up to tubes and coming out of the back of my hands, and everywhere they could think of was a tube coming out of it. And I had gone through recovery, and now I was in my hospital room where I would do most of the recovery, really, and still hooked up to tubes. And I was lying there on the hospital bed. It was in a private room. I don't know why. Probably they didn't have anybody else to put in there. But I was lying there, feeling very peaceful on my back, arms down by my sides. I was lying there on my back, just feeling deeply peaceful and more deeply peaceful by the second. And then I noticed that my breathing was becoming longer, a longer period between the breaths. And again, a little bit longer between the breaths. And I said to myself, this breathing is becoming something I don't want to have to focus on doing. I'm happy, I'm good, I'm deeply peaceful. I don't need to breathe, and I don't want to breathe. And in that very second, I was standing in front of a golden portal, and a golden portal of golden light that was just pouring forward to me. And I could see beings in there. There were probably 4, maybe 5, another person in the way back. But they were beings that were made out of the golden light. And every one of them was a shape that had a human shape, but not that I could see clothes or faces or anything like that. And they were waiting for me. And I knew they were waiting for me. And one of them from the group came forward on the left side to meet me and to welcome me. And at that moment, I knew that it was my choice to go, or it was my choice to come back and to be able to give my messages to the world through my business. And at that time, I said to myself, I don't think I want to go in. And immediately in that split second, I was back in my hospital bed with a nurse bending over my belly and my chest, yelling, breathe. Because I think she saw my eyes flicker when I came back into my body. And so I did. I took a breath, and then I resumed normal recovery in that hospital bed. And later they brought in a machine that was about 3 foot tall and looked like R2D2. It was just shaped like a dome. Put it next to my bed, hooked me up to my brain, hooked my fingertips up to it. And a technician sat next to it for about 40 minutes reading the different things. And I knew that my heart had stopped when I said, I don't want to breathe. I don't need to breathe. In that time, my heart stopped, and then I was instantly in front of the golden portal of light. And so they kept me an extra 2 days in the hospital to make sure my heart was operating okay. And it was back to completely, fully functioning within hours. He couldn't find a thing wrong with my heart. And I knew that I had chosen to have that experience. And I knew that I literally could have gone if I wanted to, but I chose not to. And I didn't think about it again. All I wanted to do was go home. I want to get out of here. I want to go home. And so the next day they said, okay, we're going to release you. So I was walking in the halls to get my balance back and to feel like I could walk. And because I still had the hysterectomy and was in a lot of pain from surgery. And I walked up to the nurse's station with my purse, and I said, can I go down to my son's coming to get me. Can I go down to the front entrance and wait for him so he doesn't have to come up here? And there were 3 nurses in there. And the one nurse said, that's the miracle woman. And the other nurse said, oh, is it? And they both looked at me. And the other nurse replied, she's not a miracle woman. She's a miracle being. And I thought, what are they talking about? They must be talking about when my heart stopped. But it didn't occur to me to ask them, what are you talking about? I just wanted to hear, can I go? Can I get out of here? And she said, no, we'll get a wheelchair for you and we'll take you down to the front. Mm-hmm. And so they did. And the next day is when I remembered it. And the memory came all flooding back. And I went, oh my gosh, I had a near-death experience. I called my son, and over the phone, I was driving, and I said, do you want to hear my near-death experience I had? He said, oh, Mom, what? What do you mean you had a near-death experience? So I told him, and he just went, whoa, you could have died. I went, yeah, I could have. And it would have been a joyful experience. I would have been home in the realms of light, in the realms of golden light. That's my soul family that I said no to. And then later, as time unfolded, I knew that they already knew I was going to say no. And that's why I didn't see them with any kind of clothes, or I didn't see their bodies in detail. All I saw was a human shape just radiating.
With regards to grief, how did that affect your understanding of grief? I get just to listen to your story, and I can imagine how it affects your spiritual journey that follows such a profound loss, because you've been there and seen that. You know, it wasn't made up. There's a difference between making a story and having an experience.
Yep, good experience. And I've had so many people tell me about their near-death experiences, which is why I decided to put this presentation together, Journey of Light, and then I was able to share the basic of that with my hospice clients, because the 30 years I've been doing Alzheimer's care, A lot of that was hospice. A lot of it wasn't. Maybe 30% hospice out of 70
Mm-hmm.
people, percent of people. And I could help them from a place of knowing that this isn't a journey of light. You have a dense frequency here. And as you pass into light, that light grows stronger and stronger, and the feeling of love grows stronger and stronger and takes over your entire consciousness. So death is a transition from dense frequency and doing your best in every moment and being to be the best person you can in every moment to becoming a light being that has known love, that you can never imagine the amount of love that is there when you're here in 3D reality. So that took my fear of death completely away. I didn't really have much to begin with, but no grief within that context at all. I had a small experience when I was here, maybe 9 months ago. I was so filled with love and walked into my kitchen, and just every single thing I looked at, love poured out from my heart for what I was looking at. I immediately came the response, everything that you have loved will greet you when you pass. And that they meant everything. They meant the trees in your backyard that you have really sincerely loved will, essence of that love will be there when you pass. And because I was picturing me passing into spirit and my little toaster sitting there, jumping up and down with joy that I had passed and could be with them. And I went, no, it's not that. It's your toaster is going to be sitting there. But the love that you had for that toaster will come back to you exactly as you loved everything. It will come back to you, and it will be there waiting for you when you pass.
Mm-hmm. I just want to talk a little bit now about your shamanic healing practices. And I'm wondering what drew you to shamanism to begin with.
Times I remember 3 where I was a Native American, 1 where I was a Mexican healer, 1 where I was a man in Mexico, and the earth was very red wherever that was. I don't know the geography of Mexico real well, but somebody told me, oh, that's the so-and-so region. And that's what I believe. I carried it into this. I knew I was a healer from the time I was 19, and my sister was dying from cancer. And I would, when she was in the hospital, I would put my hands over where it hurt and the pain would go away. And the only problem I found with that is I couldn't stand there with my hands over her forever. And my arms would get tired after 10 minutes. And I didn't know what to do about that. But it was because I didn't know what to do, I had to accept it. And I had to accept that I took her shizzle. I helped her pass with much, much less physical pain than she would have if I hadn't done that, because I was in a yoga organization that taught everybody is a healer. You just have to believe it. And 17 years old, I was doing healings on people and continued doing that and shifted that hands-on thing to help people to heal themselves by releasing the limiting beliefs and by moving into that place of the divine I am. I am perfect. I am whole. I am magnificent. And that's what I do now, is help people to accept that and teach them how to heal themselves. And I lead them to a simple process. Yeah, I had spirit teachers appear to me, teach me the healing because they already knew that I knew I was a healer. But my first book, White Buffalo and the Rainbow Warrior, details all the spirit beings that came to me in meditation and took me places and taught me things about life and sacred earth awareness. And I had that was my first teacher was White Buffalo, and brought other teachers in, Spirit of the Hawk, an old coyote woman. And Rainbow Woman came to me and talked to me about the color frequencies and the frequencies of the rainbow that get faster and faster as they start out slow with the red and move up through the rainbow. And by the time you get up to purple, it's a very fast and high frequency.
All right. So the non-traditional teachers, while receiving manic patients, were
Yeah.
through it. Mm-hmm. The role of grief in spiritual transformations. How do you guide others who are grieving to find meaning?
I teach them that,
transformation through
and
their
I just speak as a friend,
like a
really,
practice
to
that
them.
play.
Your has now entered a beauty that we can barely wrap our minds around it. And it is also human to grieve. So allow yourself to cry, allow yourself to grieve the loss that has a physical being and presence in your life. You have lost the physical presence of that person. And it's natural and normal to notice that loss and to feel sad about it. So let yourself grieve that. You can. One of the ways that they're showing me right now is allowing the grieving through the gift of water. You can imagine, and this and I do at the day when I'm with a client, I'll stand under a waterfall of golden light, and I'll just lead you through it really, really quickly. I have a certain place in my house that I stand, and I go stand under that, and I intend to have a beautiful golden shower of light that cleanses every cell of my body and takes away the dense energy, because grieving and sorrow are a lower frequency energy. There is something that we want to not transform, but to release. And so imagine being under a golden shower of rain, a rain of beautiful golden light, and then let violet light into that slowly until it just becomes pure, radiant, powerful violet light that completely engulfs you and comes down from the heavens and runs down through your legs and your feet into the heart of the Earth Mother, and is then transformed back into golden light that can both heal the Earth Mother and that she can use for whatever purposes she has. That can be to enlighten.
How do you help people who cannot visualize to create this in their mind's eye?
Well, those people, I just talk to them because they think something horrible has happened to their loved ones. So my job is to show them that there is more beauty in the spirit realms than we can ever imagine here. And I do that by telling other stories of other people. I tell them my stories of my experiences. And that way people, like you say, people learn differently. But everybody learns through stories. That's why we watch something on YouTube and we're transfixed by it. And we think we can do it too, because we're hearing of someone else's experience, someone else's story. So that's my main storytelling, is my main way of lifting them, taking them out of the dense darkness and lifting them up to their own heart center and helping them to awaken their heart center again. And within the heart, you can find joy. So joy is the frequency that you want to get into when you can. And if that's impossible for you right away, then you find the next upgraded thought and you focus on that and you let yourself become that. You let that energy frequency fill you. When you're in another place, you raise it up another frequency. You don't have to go from here to here. You just take it one, I like the words baby steps, and you heal in baby steps. You're back on track with your life, and then some little thing triggers you, and that wave from the ocean comes pouring in over you again, and you feel that grief anew. But usually it's a less frequency if you've done the work on yourself. And if you realize that, yes, it's very normal and natural to grieve the physical presence of someone, of being close to the heart of someone, but you can also talk to a person after they've left their body. If there's grief that you have because you never got to say goodbye, you never made it to the hospital in time. They know that in the higher, they already know that, but it can help you to express that to them. You can imagine them sitting in a chair in your kitchen and you're talking to them. You can imagine them just in a little bit higher frequency than you are right now, and they're listening to you. They are there, and express your sadness, express that you forgive them for what they did and that you forgive your part in it as well. Because every dance takes a back and forth between two people.
So, Alicia, what about people who express their grief in a more traditional way, in the sense of how they express their grief? I'm thinking of those ones that are deep grievers whose pain is tremendous. I would always say stay with you because they're still part of the journey that one needs to complete, which is going even deeper into that dark place. That is where our transformations begin. So somebody's going to ask, how do I get out of that place? I don't understand light and frequencies and so on. What's your response?
Yeah. Within the darkest dark is a spark of light. Quantum physicists right now are just starting to work with a concept that they call dark light. That even the dark contains lightness in it. And sometimes you have to go down into that depth of darkness to find that spark of light. And if you go down deep into that with the intention, you have to set your intention. Intention, whenever you're doing any kind of work with yourself, is very important. So to set the intention, you will go into the deepest grief that you ever felt before. And when you find that spark of light, just simply acknowledge it, go on with your grieving process, and do that whenever you have the opportunity, when you are by yourself, when you have a private moment, and you can go deep within yourself because you need privacy usually to go into that level of darkness. But always know that the dark contains a spark of light, and you can use that to bring the healing to yourself. The next time you go down into that deep well of darkness, remember that little spark was there waiting for you. And you can see that spark has grown just a little bit because you've healed yourself simply by going into the dark. You are now finding the light within your own being, within your own heart. And that light will always symbolize love. For someone that is grieving that deeply, they loved very deeply. And so when you find that spark of light within the grieving, you are honoring your loved one. You are honoring the love that you had between you. You don't have to stay in a deep well of grief. You can come out little bit by little bit in that spark of love that you remember and that you experience with your loved one, whether it was a baby, whether it was your sister, whether it was your life partner of 50 years. You can heal yourself through love. And love is really the only way of healing yourself, by allowing the light of love back into your life and honoring that within you. And that will slowly raise your frequency bit by bit. And you'll acknowledge that, oh, I don't feel as bad as I did a month ago. But you will always carry that spark of love with you. You will always honor that within your heart.
We're just about out of time. I'm really curious about your work as a heart alchemist and joy facilitator. I'm curious, what do you mean by that?
Well, joy is one of the highest frequencies of source that exists. And because we have finite minds, we try to understand the vast unlimitedness of source. And I like to compare it to a rainbow of the lower frequencies at the bottom, expanding into the higher frequencies of a faster moving frequency, a higher and faster and finer frequency of light. And those same frequencies are contained within the totality of Source. There are lower frequencies because Source expresses everything. God expresses everything, and God within everything. Everything that exists is God expressing in form. And so, again, I like to compare it to a divine white light frequency. Can't see with our human eyes, but it still has those same frequencies. The lower frequencies express, the medium frequencies express, and the higher frequencies express. Joy is like a band of light within the higher frequencies of God, within the higher frequencies of the divine creator. And joy is a very fast moving frequency. So we can use joy to speed up our own beings. The cells in our own body respond and transform with the frequency of joy. And that I mean by joy is the fast track through ascension. Joy is the train you want to get on. Animals express joy. Cats lay in the sun. We feel that presence of joy. A horse enjoys the feeling of being physical. The horse has that vibrant, strong, they run just to feel that joy of their physical presence and what they are capable of doing. Joy is the train you want to get on. How do you do that? Well, you focus on beauty all around you. You stop and you look at one flower outside of a shop. You look at the beauty of that one bloom. And flowers express joy, and you can take that in. I will stop so often, and especially on my morning. So I'll just end with, remember, life is meant to be lived with joy. Because we're human beings, we also have frequencies, and we can go into those lower frequencies. And through those, we can, with our intention, we can raise that frequency up. And that's how we grow. We grow through going into the darkness and coming back into the light with new solutions, new understandings of who we are and of the power we have to become whole and full.
Thank you for joining with Alicia and I. We hope the stories and insights shared today have offered you comfort, understanding, and perhaps a new perspective on the journey of grief and spiritual transformation. Remember, even in the darkest of times, there is a spark of light within you, waiting to guide you back to love. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who may benefit from hearing these words. Until next time, take care of your heart, honor your grief, and allow yourself to heal.